رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد Assalamu Alaikum wa Rahmatullahi wa Barakatu. Respected brothers and sisters, dear listeners and viewers, we in the last few weeks have been speaking about some essential principles with which we can rectify and better our family lives and our homes. And we stressed that it is extremely important that our homes become a shelter for us from a perspective of Iman, because outside of our homes we are facing a great deal of fitan and tribulations and trials. So our homes in relation to Iman and Taqwa should be a shelter, or rather should be shelters for ourselves, but also from an emotional perspective, it is important for our homes to be a shelter for both husband and wife, the children, and the family members, or else what we will find is that outside of our homes there are many again trials and tribulations and temptations that will destroy any prospect of having a successful life here and also in the hereafter. وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's protection. So we said some of these important principles are, and we are talking about the relationship first and foremost between husband and wife, which is one of the most difficult and complex relationships, because we are not bonded by blood, right? So we are not, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given the husband and the wife a greater, in the sense of responsibility, a greater position than even the parents, right? So the husband's first duty is to his wife, and the wife's first duty is to her husband. So this is an extremely complex relationship, and we said that we have to educate ourselves in relation to what Allah expects of us, because ultimately marriage is a blessing of Allah, just like children are a blessing of Allah, and with every blessing comes responsibility. And if we lead our lives in accordance to these principles that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam teaches us verbally and in his life, and demonstrates in his life, then we will inshallah bi'idhnillahi ta'ala live the best human experience in this world. Meaning that that is not to say that you will not face difficulties and challenges. Anyone who hopes to gain anything in this life without sacrifice, without facing challenges and difficulties and conflicts, they are expecting too much, right? Because this life is not a life where your desires are fulfilled, but rather it is a life where you are tested and you are tried. And the best of the creation of Allah, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, faced challenges both outside and in his home, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made that so he becomes a model for our ummah and for his ummah and his nation and humanity until the day of Qiyamah. So the family life begins with this relationship between husband and wife. We said some of these principles can be extended also to our dealings with our children and so on and so forth, other family members, but we're focusing now mainly on the relationship between husband and wife, because if this is rectified, then bi'idhnillahi azza wa jal, the relationship with the children will be good, the relationship between siblings will be good, because they are directly learning. And we see these new sort of warnings in relation to speeding, that I have a problem with speeding. I think a lot of young people have a problem with speeding, and especially in our society. And this is actually something that is not pleasing to Allah Azza wa Jal. Rasulullah ﷺ said to a Sahabi radiallahu anhu that you have two qualities that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves. Al-hilm wal-anah. Hilm is forbearance or tolerance, that you delay the reaction time. You can react now, but you say, no, actually I'm just going to pause for a moment and wait for an opportunity that is better. And anah is to take things slowly. And Rasulullah ﷺ said, al-ajalatu min ash-shaytan. To be in a hurry and rush, this is from shaitan. وَالتَّأَنِّي مِنَ الرَّحْمَنِ. And to take things slow and think of consequences and taking one's time is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And prime example is that Quran came over a long period of time. Revelation came over a long period of time. Anyway, and I'm using myself as an example here, that I've got this problem with speeding, not because I just, there's the adrenaline factor that you enjoy going fast, but because you're constantly rushing and you're trying to put so many things in your life. So instead of structuring your day, what you end up doing is, everything last minute. And because of that, you rush. And in these, I've taken, I think, maybe one or two. I'm not an example in this, absolutely not. I've taken, I think, 2 of these speed awareness courses, and they tell you that if you're constantly late, then there's a problem with you. It's not the traffic, it's not people, it's not the red light, it's not other drivers, but rather it's you. Take time, structure your day, leave earlier, and you won't have to speed and then have to face the consequences. And in the lessons they show you sort of videos, and you seem to think, oh, this will never happen to me, of accidents and terrible things that have happened due to excess speed. And I find that these courses, when I've attended them, for a moment, I remember those principles and what have you, and then it just disappears. It goes away with time, 2-3 months. And then you sort of forget and you fall back onto old habits. But a warning that I have seen just recently has marked me. And whenever I am, and that is that your child, don't speed, because your child is learning from you, right? And as parents, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed this extraordinary quality, despite our failures and shortcomings and the many bad things in our life in terms of character and actions. We don't want them to transfer to our children, right? We don't want our bad side to transfer to our children. We want the good things to transfer to our children. Even things as features, right? You will have husband and wife, and each will have they will have some special features, and we wish for our children to have those special features. And you sort of say to yourself, I don't want my child to have my feet, because, right, I would rather, or things of that sort. And this is a great blessing of Allah, and this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually commands us to hold our parents in this esteemed level, because there is no one that will sacrifice as much as for you as much as your parents, and no one will wish goodness for you as much as your parents, and they will want to protect you from every harm. So if we are wanting for our children to have successful lives, family lives, then we have to teach that by example. And this is the most dangerous thing in relationships, is that our children are learning from our interactions as husband and wife, as parents. They're learning, and the consequence of it, we may be able to deal with, maybe the abuse that takes place, the injustice that takes place. We are patient and we got used to it, we become numb to it. But our children are learning from it, and that is going to harm their lives. So it is extremely important for us to look at these guidelines and implement them in our lives for our benefit, so that we gain the sukoon and the tranquility that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promises, for which He created this sort of the purpose of marriage is to find tranquility and peace and live in harmony and affection and love. So we said previously that one principle is to be fair and just, and this is extremely difficult. The reason for that is because your nafs is involved, your ego is involved, and the ego always likes to be right? I am right and I am just and I give everybody what is due. But the reality is that we are far from that. So you have to be fair, and Islam is actually being just. Is the principle of Islam. This is why shirk is rejected, because you are not doing Allah justice. Allah is the one who created, He is the one who provides, He is the one who protects, He is the one who gives everything. And then you go and worship someone else, or implore someone else, or beg from someone else. This is injustice. Inna shirka la dhulmun azim, Allah Azza wa Jalla says. That the reason shirk is rejected is that it is a great injustice to Allah, right? And likewise being just to yourself. And this is an example is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that inna li nafsika alayka haqqan, you have a right upon yourself, right? You have to be just to yourself. You can't fast continuously for the rest of your life, because that would be an injustice to yourself. You can't prevent yourself from sleep, that would be unjust to yourself. You can't prevent yourself or stop yourself from being happy, that would be injustice to yourself. You can't stop yourself from enjoying the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has permitted, because that would be doing injustice to yourself and also being just to others. So we've spoken about that perhaps 2 weeks ago, about justice, and then last week we spoke about honor. This is extremely important, honoring one another and respecting one another. And just to quickly recap that, see the person that you are living with, you are sharing your life with, honor them, because first of all they are the creation of Allah, and Allah has honored them and made them from the children of Adam, right? And they are believers, they hold iman in their lives, honor them for that. And as Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu ta'ala, this fallacy that a family home can only be successful, and this is what the West is sort of teaching us, and now even the East is believing that the basis of the marital relationship or the family home is love. And Umar radiallahu anhu says, far from that. He says that not all homes are built on love, right? Because this is an emotion. You can't base the society on and families on an emotion. Emotions come and go. Sometimes they can't even be explained. You love someone, you don't know why you love them. They hurt you so much, and they harm you so much, and they do so many things, but yet you love them, right? For example, your love for your unconditional love for your children, no matter what they do to you, no matter how you'll find people have love for their children, and their children are like the worst criminals out there, but they still love their children. The love that you have for your parents. These are emotions that sometimes cannot be explained, and you cannot just sort of wait around waiting for this love to happen, although it is something that is mahmood and encouraged and liked, and it will come through. So there is the love that cannot be explained, and then there is a love because of a person's attitude towards you and their dealing with you. And this is the one that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala encourages, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam encourages, that if we deal with each other in a just manner, in an honorable manner, then eventually that love will grow, and it will be not just an emotion, but rather why you love that person, right? And why you have those feelings. And this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً. That Allah places this bond, strong bond of mercy towards one another, and love and affection towards one another, and that comes first and foremost by honoring one another, right? Honoring the person, honoring their views, honoring their parents, their friends, and respecting. And the basic principle is that deal with others as you would like others to deal with you. The third principle, which is extremely important, in our experience of life as human beings, and that's sabr, patience. Allahu Akbar, patience, such a great quality, and unfortunately we only talk about it, right? And we do not exercise it. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, mentions sabr in the Quran, as we know, number of places, more than 70 times. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, different ahadith, sometimes describing patience, sometimes encouraging patience, sometimes telling us of the merits of patience, sometimes telling us not to give up the quality of patience. So sabr, being patient, is an extremely important principle for any success in life, right? Without patience, and patience actually does not do justice to the term sabr. It's patience and steadfastness and persistence and all of these things put together. If we want that tranquility and that peace to come into our homes, then we need to embellish ourselves with this quality, patience. And it is extremely difficult to, yes, we talk about it in very good terms, and we'll describe it, and Imam, or rather Abu al-Atahiya, Rahmatullahi, one of the great poets of Islam in the time of Harun al-Rashid, he says, وصفت التقى وصفا كأنك ذو تقى وريح الخطايا من ثيابك تسطع. That, when we come to describing something, he says, when you describe piety, you describe it as if you are pious. And in reality, the scent of sins is coming from your clothes, not even from yourself. You are sinning so much that people can smell the scent of the sins, or the foul smell of the sins. So we are very good at this, describing things and talking about things, but implementing them in our lives is something different altogether. And this is why Allah Azza wa Jal says to us in the Quran, He starts a surah with سبح لله ما في السماوات وما في الأرض وهو العزيز الحكيم, that everything in the heavens and the earth glorify Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and He is the mighty, the wise. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لم تقولون ما لا تفعلون. That, oh, you who believe, why do you say that which you do not do? So we have this. But the hope is that we speak about these qualities, and we talk about them until we begin to inculcate them in our lives. And I don't want to specifically target the topic of sabr. We'll have heard many lectures about it, and it is enough to say that Allah Azza wa Jal says, إِنَّمَا يُوَفَّى الصَّابِرُونَ أَجْرَهُمْ بِغَيْرِ حِسَابٍ. That Allah putting you, and this is the hikmah and the rahmah of Allah, that He puts you through difficulties and challenges in your life so that you can be patient, and He will grant you reward without limit. Without limit. Rasulullah says on the day of Qiyamah, people who were prayed voluntary salah a lot will be given their share of reward, and that is numbered. And the people of fast will be given their share of reward, and that is numbered. And the people of sadaqah, and so on and so forth. And then the people of patience will come. People who face difficulties and challenges with patience, with courage and strength. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will فَيُصَبُّ عَلَيْهِمُ الثَّوَابُ صَبًّا, or something close to that, that Allah will just shower them with virtues and reward. So this is a virtue, but it is extremely difficult in our society, because our society, and especially with our generations, the people who are brothers and sisters who are born in this society, extremely difficult to really implement the patience that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Rasulullah encourage in the Quran and in the hadith. Why? Because number one, we live a fast life. That's number one. And number two, we are we're living in a society that says, fight for your rights, fight for your rights. And that is not to say that patience is the opposite, don't fight for your right. No. Sometimes patience is to overlook. And sometimes it is to fight for your right, but in a manner that is sort of going constructive manner, instead of fighting for your right and destroying everything, right? And at times patience is actually sacrificing your right. And this is what Rasulullah ﷺ teaches in his life. And there are limits for everything. And when we look at the patience of Rasulullah ﷺ with his wives, 9 wives in one given time. And he dealt with jealousy and all of these things happened. And sometimes Rasulullah ﷺ took it very lightly, and he would smile in response to some of the things that his wives would say to him. That if you took them out of that context, that almost insulting to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but he would just be patient and demonstrate. And yes, there were limits where Rasulullah did not accept. They say that once Safiya radiallahu ta'ala anha wa arda was traveling with Rasulullah for Hajj with his other wives, and something happened to her animal. So Rasulullah said to Zainab, he said, Zainab, because Zainab was a wealthy woman, and Zainab radiallahu anha wa arda, the wives of Rasulullah. And I ask of our sisters at home, please, read the life of the wives of Rasulullah and their characters, and how they were not angels, they were humans with defects and human emotion, and they will be angry at times and be jealous at times, and that's what's amazing about the life of Sahaba radiallahu anhum ajma'in. Sometimes the life of Rasulullah he's a model, but he's so perfect that you sort of say, how can I reach this level of perfection? And that is not asked of you. You are asked to follow Rasulullah in his ways as much as it is possible for you, and not to you will not be able to reach that level of Rasulullah. But when you read the lives of Sahaba and Sahabiyat, you see the human factor in them, that they were not perfect, but they implemented, and it was a journey for them, for Sahaba radiallahu anhum ajma'in, took on the teachings of Rasulullah, the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and there came a point where they became the best people after Anbiya alayhimus salam are Sahaba radiallahu anhum ajma'in, without doubt, in God knows how many trillions, billions or trillions of human beings that have lived and will come to live until the day of Qiyamah. They are the best, and out of them Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu, Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu. And we need to get in touch with these personalities so that they affect our lives and we see them. Anyway, Zainab radiallahu ta'ala anha wa arda, Rasulullah said, give a mountain animal, a horse or probably a camel to Safiya. So Zainab radiallahu anha wa ardaha, human, and there is the jealousy factor between the wives of Rasulullah. So she says, you want me to give an animal to your Jewish lady? Allahu Akbar. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam stopped speaking to her for something close to 4 months, until she had given up any hope that their relationship was going. She thought that Rasulullah is either going to leave me like this or he's going to divorce me. Why? Because this is, now you've crossed the line. You are entitled to jealousy, you are entitled to anger, you are entitled to these human emotions, but be just, don't transgress. When she described Safiya radiallahu anha as a Yahudiya, Jewish person, now it's a matter of belief, and Rasulullah says that when a believer says to another believer that he is kafir, then one of them is kafir, right? So to make that point and to teach that this is not to be taken lightly, right? He did not speak to her for the rest of the journey, and they returned, and maybe 2-3 months after that, then Rasulullah entered upon Zainab radiallahu ta'ala anha. So patience does not mean that, you let everything go, but rather knowing and using Sharia as and even the social norms and your culture as a guide in how you deal with situations. But it is extremely important to be patient, and sometimes, especially the younger generation, we don't go for advice to imams in our relationships because we know that the first thing they're going to say, be patient, brother, be patient, sister. And the problem is not with the advice of the imam. The problem is how we are receiving that advice. It doesn't mean that, oh, just keep taking the injustice. No. Sometimes it means that take your right, but find a right way of taking it. Don't destroy, especially when children are involved. Obviously, imams are trained to to say that. You have to be patient. Why? Because you are going to destroy your family life. And out there, no, you are number one. And it's understandable because there is no akhirah. There is no belief in Allah, who is the supreme being who can change situation. There is no belief in reward and retribution in Jannah. There is no belief in an eternal life. There is no belief of sacrificing one's needs and rights for the well-being of others. So outside it, people will tell you, you're not happy, just break it up, go and look for something. But how many marriages are you going to break? And how many divorces do you have to go through before you realize that the problem is with you? That's you. And in most cases, when relationships fail, is because there isn't enough patience. Because we are not evil, right? In every person, Allah Azza wa Jalla has placed good character, good attributes, and bad attributes. This is our nature as human beings, and our challenge to balance the two and do more good than evil. So if you fail in your relationship, it is impossible that it was all the fault of the other. There'll always be a factor that when you look at it, in 75% of the cases, or maybe 80% of the cases, you will find that there wasn't enough patience exercised by both parties. So, what are the different levels of patience? One is that when your husband and your wife are decent, when you describe them, and people often come to imams with this. Last week I went on for too long, so inshallah 5 minutes somebody put their hands up, so I stop. So often the complaint is, my wife is my husband, good person, but I've got a problem with this. So this is where you need to exercise patience. Don't expect your wife to be, or your husband to be, as you were imagining them when you were 16 years old, reading books about love and what have you, or watching films or series or what have you. That will not happen. Don't seek to change a human being in that way. It's impossible to look at yourself. You have faults, you have defects, but mine are not as bad, right? So the first thing is, if your husband, your wife, your spouse is from the perspective of Sharia, they are a correct person, right? Which means they abide by the major principles, they fulfill the obligations, they stay away from major sin. But they have character that one will be moody, one will be everything is fun and they want to laugh at everything. And I can't, this person is not serious, everything is a joke, right? People complain of this. And what happens is that, there are small things, but because it's a trait, it's not something that happens once in a month, it's a trait, so it's happening every day, and that builds up, and the pressure builds up, and it's like, I've had enough, I can't deal with this anymore, right? This is where you have to be patient, and you actually have to let go. Because if you don't, then you will destroy that marriage, you will destroy yourself, because you will go through emotional burden, and shaitan comes and says, just separate. Allah made it halal, that's it, get out. And then out of each other's life. The reality is, when you've lived with a human being, you can never get away from them. If you get away from that person and their physical being, then they are going to stay stuck in your mind until you die. And it's even worse, and this is like least sort of easy case scenario when you have no children. But if you have children, there's no way you're getting away from that. That person is going to come every week and come take their children. You're going to have to contact them. You've got issues with your children. They're a parent, right? You're partners in this now. Now it's either you be patient and you deal with this and you overlook it. And the best way to overlook it is to look at faults within myself. And if we just gain this, Allahu Akbar, you're going to, they say you have two eyes. One should be looking at the qualities of others, and one should be looking at the bad traits in yourself. We have switched it over. We look at all of the bad things in the other person, and mashallah, I'm such a good person. Alhamdulillah. So change. When you find yourself, you are getting frustrated with the character of your partner or a trait of, don't focus on it. Focus on the good things, right? And focus on your shortcomings. And think about it. Say, look, Ya Allah, I'm going to forgive and overlook this. And this is, taghaful, overlooking. Not trying to deal with every minute detail. And this is usually a mistake of young people, right? Every small thing, let's deal with it. Okay, big conversations about what? Small thing, right? Big conversations and argument and all of this. And we think that we're doing a great thing. Why? Because we're young and we lack that patience and we lack that tolerance. But as we get older, you sort of realize that, you need to pick your fights. You're not going to win every one of them, right? So focus on the major issues and let the small things slide, or let the traits slide. Or you can mention it, but don't expect just because you've said it once it's going to change, right? It's going to take time. So, and you have to have patience in the way you deliver. Don't get angry and shout about it, because when you're doing that, you just, the other person is not listening. So this is in relation to when your spouse is somebody who is correct. In general terms, they are upholding the principles of Allah. They are, honest and trustworthy and what have you. The major things are right. Right? But then they have minor defects in their personalities. There's nothing you can do about that. Don't seek to change that. Rasulullah in an example about a woman, about the woman, he said that, and the reason for this is that Rasulullah is trying to, he's speaking to an audience of men, not because men don't have their defects. Yeah? Men have their problems. They're quick to get angry. They're quick to act on their anger. And women have their defects, sometimes they don't let go of something, they keep repeating it all the time. And this is something that you have to accept. This is part of life. And anybody who goes into marriage thinking that, it's going to be rosy and happily ever after, they're living in cuckoo land. And the reality is you're going to face more challenges when you are married than when you were single. Single life is you're dealing with yourself. Now you're dealing with another person, you have to be patient, you have to tolerate. So this is in relation to problems in trait and character that don't make a person a bad person, right? But it's not what you like, it's not how you were brought up, it's not what you expect. One is in facing injustice, right? And we said previously that in relation to when it is the injustice is coming from the wife to the husband, it is not called injustice, it's called disobedience, right? Because Allah Azza wa Jal has given the man a certain amount of physical and emotional strength to be able to deal with the pressures of life, right? So he's able to deal with certain things in a better way, and in the sort of hierarchy, he is the person of authority. So when the woman does something wrong, it is considered towards her husband, it is considered as disobedience, or nushuz rather. Disobedience is not the term, but nushuz, meaning that she is not fulfilling her responsibility. We said that when the husband does, and often sisters say, why is it that the woman has to obey, right? Yes, the woman has to obey, but the husband, when he does injustice to his wife, this is dhulm. This is injustice. This is even a greater sin. Why? Because she is in a weak position. Allah Azza wa Jal has placed her in a weak position. She has to be under you, right? She may be more intelligent, wealthier than you, smarter than you, better character, more religious, more pious, more beautiful, even physically stronger than you. But she has to accept that Allah Azza wa Jal has placed her in that position. So, and if you don't fulfill her right, this is injustice. And Rasulullah says that الظُّلْمُ ظُلُمَاتٌ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. Injustice is going to be a source of darknesses on the day of Qiyamah, and this is, like we said last week, something that Allah will repay you for it in this world before the next. So, in the face of injustice, if you can do something about it and you can change it, then you need to look within yourself. What is my level of tolerance? Right? If I can let go and give up my right for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal, then this is a great sacrifice, and Allah Azza wa Jal says, إِنَّ ذَلِكَ لَمِنْ عَزْمِ الْأُمُورِ. Right? Allah praises this status that وَلَمَنْ صَبَرَ وَغَفَرَ, the one who is patient and forgives. And this is in عند المقدرة, when a person is able to, you're able, for example, as a husband, you're able to exercise your authority, but you remain patient. Right? As a wife, you're able to sort of ask for divorce, or you're able to react in a bad way to the injustice, but you are being patient and you let go completely of that right, and you in your heart say, Ya Allah, I want a retribution for this, and Allah will reward you in this world before the next. And it's not weakness. Patience is not weakness. It doesn't mean that you don't have to deal with the situation. It means deal with it in a certain manner, in the way of Rasulullah, in the way of the Quran and the teachings of the Quran. So facing injustice, or for example, major breakdown in relationship due to your rights not being fulfilled. So two ways of being patient. One is to overlook it. If the family life can continue and you can let go and sacrifice that right, then overlook. If it cannot, it is a primary right principle of marriage, right? If that cannot be sort of overlooked, and the family structure is going to suffer because of overlooking this, then to be patient is knowing how to deal with it, right? It doesn't mean that, oh, forget it. No, you have to deal with it, but knowing how to. So ignoring it for a moment, thinking about the best way to approach the subject matter, how to deal with it, getting other people involved is also important, like elders of the family or imam, people of knowledge, instead of saying, you know what, I can't do this anymore and I just want a divorce and I just want separation, or even worse, just sort of each one going into their bubble and stop speaking to each other for months on end. This is not, it's not good for you. Yes, you are reacting to your right being taken away, but you are going to hurt yourself more than you are going to benefit yourself. So having this in mind, this principle of patience at all times. In times it is more important than others. In times it means to let go completely, to forgive. And at times it means that you don't have to let go of your right, you don't have to sacrifice your right, but it's just going the right way about, the correct way about getting that right, inshallah tabaraka wa ta'ala. With that in mind, Allah Azza wa Jal will inshallah protect us and protect our families. And I always say to brothers and sisters, shaitan comes with this rosy idea that divorce, end of the story, and you can live a happy life. The reality is far from that, and the truth is that exercising patience, and divorce is always there. The option of divorce is always there. Separation is always there, right? At the end of the day, whenever you've had enough, you can come to that. But if you sort of resort to the last option before taking all the other options, number one is you are going to cause yourself a great deal of pain. You are going to cause family members a great deal of pain, especially children, right? Separations and divorces, they affect children in a way that is beyond beyond description and beyond repair, right? And they will continue to suffer their entire life because of this separation that is sometimes justified. We are not saying that it's not justified. Most importantly is that you've cheated yourself from getting a great deal of reward. That if you remain in the relationship, in the marriage, you are patient, seeking and hoping for reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I will end with just this short story, just an example of how people in the past were. One of the Salihin was asked that, and he was a scholarly person, he was asked, what is the reward, the action that you hope for the most reward for? So he thought for a moment, and then he responded, and he said, when I was young, my parents were trying so hard to get me married. You know how parents are. You have reached the age we need to look for a nice girl from a nice background, nice family, what have you, and this pressure, especially the mothers, right? It's like a discussion in lunch and breakfast and dinner. Right? So they tried so hard, but I refused. I was refusing, because he did not feel the need at the time. And then he said, one day a woman came to me and she said to me that, I have developed love for you. Because obviously sometimes the imam is there giving lectures and everything, and women think that this person is, mashallah, he's Jibreel in human form. So anyway, she says, I have this great, I have love for you, and I ask you by Allah to marry me. He said, when she asked by Allah, I would not reject. I could not reject. So I accepted. And he said her father was a poor man. And when I asked for his daughter's hand in marriage, he was amazed and so happy. And he said, but when I married her, he said she could only see from one eye. So awra, and arja, right? She could not walk properly. She had a defect in one of her feet. And on top of that, extremely jealous, to the point that she won't let me go outside. At times she said, no, you can't go outside, because of her jealousy. And he said, I put up with that, never shown her. And he said, inside of myself, I despised her. Not as a person, but I despised these traits. But I put up with it for 15 years, Allahu Akbar. Not letting her on a single time. Because, something, why am I going to complain? I've made the decision to get married, right? I can complain about her, physical defects, and there's nothing she can do about them, right? So I remained patient for 15 years. And he said that I hope that this is the action that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to reward me most for. This is a great scholar, a worshipper of Allah Azza wa Jal, great worship, great advice to people, but hoping. And this is just an example. We're not saying that this is how we are going to reach this level or this much sacrifice, but just an example. And even better one, the example of Asiya radiallahu anha wa ardaha, that Allah mentions her in the Quran. What's the verse, Shaykh Yusuf? Yes. وَضَرَبَ اللَّهُ مَثَلًا لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا امْرَأَةَ فِرْعَوْنَ. He gave an example of believing women, because this surah is dealing with the wives of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and it is advice to the wives of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, surah al-Tahrim, and to all women in general. So Allah Azza wa Jal gives example of believing women and disbelieving women. So he gave the example of Nuh and Lut, the wives of Nuh and Lut, and then he gave the example of believing women, and he said imra'ata fir'aun, right? The example is the wife of Fir'aun. إِذْ قَالَتْ رَبِّ ابْنِ لِي عِنْدَكَ بَيْتًا فِي الْجَنَّةِ. When she implored and asked Allah Azza wa Jal to build a home for her, a dwelling for her in paradise. وَنَجِّنِي مِنْ فِرْعَوْنَ وَعَمَلِهِ وَنَجِّنِي مِنَ الْقَوْمِ الظَّالِمِينَ. Protect me from Fir'aun and his deeds, his disbelief. وَنَجِّنِي مِنَ الْقَوْمِ الظَّالِمِينَ. And protect me from the oppressors. She was oppressed. Yes, it was in relation to her faith, but at the same time, she suffered, emotionally and physically, and she was killed to the point that she was, martyred. So Allah Azza wa Jal made her an example, and not only that, she is the wife of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in paradise, to show that Allah, retributes and rewards for patience a great deal. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to embellish ourselves and our homes and our family lives with this great quality of patience. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. Ya Allah.